Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of The Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 17th of May. So coming to the first article, why an industrial policy is crucial. Now this is an important article. It has relevance for economy section in general studies paper 3. The context of this article is the importance of an industrial policy in India. At present there is no industrial policy in India. So the editorial is advocating for one industrial policy which is going to be important in enhancing the economic benefits for India. So coming to the issues that have been discussed, the first issue is with regards to the manufacturing sector in India. If you have been reading economy, you will know that this is one of the weakest link in Indian economy. The manufacturing sector is what has continuously been stagnant. This is what is at 16%. This is the contribution of the manufacturing sector in the entire economy, and this is what is stagnated for very, very long. And this is one of the major challenges that the Indian economy is facing. This is what is resulting in the slowdown of the economy. So that is one issue that Indian economy is facing. Next, something that is important and that has been discussed here is with regards to the Asian economies. A comparison is what has been drawn. For example, the case of Malaysia is what is spoken about. In Malaysia, the economy is what has increased. It has literally tripled, and the share of the manufacturing sector in the Malaysian economy is what is 24%. Then a case of Thailand is what is mentioned, where the increase in the manufacturing sector's contribution to economy is what has increased from 13% to 33%. So in Thailand it is 33%. So despite the fact that these countries are much smaller than India, their share of the manufacturing sectors in these these Asian economies is also what is higher than India, which is something that India should introspect, that what is the reason for this. Reasons for this is what India needs to churn is what is being discussed here. Next, something that has been discussed is with regards to manufacturing sector being the core to growth. Now here what has been discussed is that manufacturing sector is one of the most important sectors to reduce poverty, primarily because what happens is that in the service sector, if you will see, for example, IT sector is a service sector. So in this sector, only the highly educated people can largely participate. And the large section in India is what is comprising of not so very educated capital. Human capital in India is not very developed. So what is important is that there should be manufacturing sector so that even these people are what can seek an employment. The service sector is only going to cater to a small population who have high-end degrees with them, and this is not the case with the entire India, where education facilities are still not available to a large section of the population. So for these people to come out of the poverty is what is important, is that they get jobs, and these jobs are what can be provided in the manufacturing sector. So manufacturing sector will act as a core to the growth of the economy. It will have multiple positive spillover effects. It is what is going to result in sustained growth of the economy. So that is why it is going to be the core to the growth, and focus on the manufacturing sector is what is warranted. Next, the editorial is discussing about some global trends. Now what is being discussed here is that if you will see the pattern of several countries after the 2008 financial crisis, for example, if we will see the case of US, or for that matter the case of European Union, and if we will separate UK from the European Union, then if you will examine these countries, these were the major countries which advocated for free trade, that advocated for a capitalist system rather than a socialist one. But today, after the 2008 crisis, they are themselves not following what they have been advocating. Rather, they are themselves becoming highly protectionist. For example, the US for now is avoiding imports from China. It is raising the import and the custom duties. Even UK has moved out of European Union. So this is something that is being seen globally, that the trend is towards focusing on manufacturing within one's country rather than importing it from foreign countries. And if this is what is the global trend, then why is India after 1991 reforms not focusing on manufacturing within the country is what has been analyzed, that India too needs to strengthen its own manufacturing sector. Next is the issue of a manufacturing policy, which is the gist of this particular article. Here the editorial is discussing that definitely there is a need for a manufacturing policy in India. More than 100 countries at present have a manufacturing policy, but if we will analyze India, then India at present does not have a manufacturing policy of its own. So why is it that India does not have a manufacturing policy when more than 100 countries are in this favor? Then definitely India should also have a manufacturing policy of its own. This data is what is taken from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. So this is from where this particular data of 100 countries having a manufacturing policy is what has been picked up. Next, what has been discussed here is the scheme in context of manufacturing sector. This is the Make in India scheme. Now, if you will see this particular scheme itself, the name is Make in India. It is not Make India, which clearly says that it is an attractive scheme for foreign companies to come into India and thereby increase manufacturing. What the scheme is largely focusing upon is the ease of doing business. This scheme is focusing on increasing the FDIs. What is the need is that domestic manufacturing is what needs to be increased. So this is one important analysis which this editorial is drawing. It is saying that Make in India is focusing only on one section of manufacturing, but rather the focus should be on developing manufacturing sector from within India. So that is what is important. Next, what has been discussed here are the reasons for the need of an industrial policy. Now, the first reason is that if India has its own industrial policy, this is what is going to help in coordination. What will happen is that sometimes the projects that are being developed in India, for example, infrastructure projects, are what are of such scale that they are interstate in nature, and this requires immense degree of coordination. So if India has an industrial policy, then there can be scope for ensuring coordination of these projects. Next, what is important is this industrial policy can help align human capital along with the industrial requirement. At present, the biggest challenge in India is that India, despite the fact that it has a large number of youth, but the issue is that India's youth is not adequately skilled for getting employment in the industries, and this is what is resulting in a weak manufacturing sector. What is required is that the youth of the country is what is skilled adequately as per the needs of the industry. Next, what is required is that the domestic firms are what are converted into cartels. What happens is that if a large company is what is there and it is manufacturing, say, a particular product, suppose soaps it is manufacturing, and in India there are small companies, there are multiple small companies also which are manufacturing soaps. Now, because this company is so large in its size that these companies are firstly unable to compete with this, and later or sooner what happens is that this large company actually take over all the smaller companies. So as a result of which the domestic manufacturing of small industries are what is not able to take place. So in this context, what is important is that a policy be developed and protection be given to these small companies so that they can then collectively form a cartel or a group, and once they have collectively formed a cartel, then they can also provide adequate competition to this big company, and as a result, sooner or later these companies will themselves also develop. So this is what a manufacturing policy is what can do, an industrial policy can do. So that is why an industrial policy is what is required for India. For example, in the case of China has provided such kind of safeguards to companies like Lenovo or Hair. These are commonly heard companies that we hear of them now. So they have once started as small companies in China. That is one case that has been mentioned. Another impact of an industrial policy will be that this will help avoid competition. This is one of the biggest problems that Indian industries are what are facing. Now, what is happening is that, for instance, the telecom sector, or for that matter the aviation sector, in these sectors what has happened is that the competition is what has been very, very fierce, and because of this fierce competition, what happens is that initially definitely the consumer is benefited because the prices are what are low because of competition, but in the long run this competition is what makes the big industries unsustainable. For example, recently we are seeing that so many aviation sector industries are what have been shut down. So this is all what is reflected. For example, the Jet Airways, the Kingfisher. So this is what is reflecting that this competition is not sustainable in the long run. Now, what will happen because of this is that when companies will each getting shut down after a long time, what is going to happen is that these companies will not be sustainable and they will shut down, and eventually one or two companies will be the ones who will remain, and once these are the only companies that are remaining, competition is what has been wiped out, then suddenly they will raise the prices. For example, in the aviation sector, now only few companies being left, it is being expected that they will suddenly raise the airfares. So instead of this happening, it was better that previously only airfares were such that it could have maintained a balance. A competition is what could have been ensured right from the beginning. So that is one issue vis-a-vis India, and this is what needs to be addressed, and an industrial policy is what can help maintain this particular issue. Also, an industrial policy is what can help ensure minimum efficient scale in industries. Now, what we understand by minimum efficient scale is that sometimes a company is too small for it to be sustainable. So some safeguards is what can be maintained, some norms are what can be maintained, so that at least a company should be big enough so that at least it should have a sufficient number of employees so that it can offer at least some competition in the sector, and it could be sustainable in the sector. So these are some benefits that one can ensure or one can get out of the that is one of the reasons for ensuring an industrial policy, and thus these are the benefits that can be reaped out of an industrial policy. So that is what has been discussed here. Next is the issue of East Asia miracle. Now this is in the context of several East Asian countries. The growth in these countries is what has been towards export-oriented manufacturing, and this is what has resulted in the participation of these countries in the global value chains, and this is what is today called as the East Asia miracle. This is clearly something that has not happened in India. Even if we see the ASEAN, India has huge amount of trade gap vis-a-vis the ASEAN. All the ASEAN countries have developed based on the manufacturing, and India should learn from that experience, is what is advocated here. Next is the example of the IT sector. The editorial is discussing that, and from the IT sector it can be learned that in this particular industry, in the IT industry, the government had given a lot of support to this particular industry. For example, the government had invested in creating high-speed internet connectivity. It had invested in giving several perks to the IT sector. Several tax benefits were what were given to them. So all of these benefits were what were given to them by the government, and as a result of which this sector boomed, and today it is one of the most performing sectors. So just based on this model, what is required is that the government focus similarly on the manufacturing sector so that the manufacturing sector does develop. So that is what this editorial is discussing. Indeed, this is one of the major challenges, and a question can directly come that what are the flaws in India's economy, or for that matter, what are the problems in India's manufacturing sector, or the question could come that the manufacturing sector has stagnated since 1991, what could be done? So in these kind of questions, these points are going to be of utmost relevance. So that is going to be the importance of this article. Coming to the next article, slippery slope. Now the context here is with regards to the rising tensions in West Asia. Large part of this article is what is a repetition, but there are some new points which we can extract. Now coming to the issues, basically the context here, one aspect of the context here is that Iran's foreign minister Javed Zarif is in New Delhi, and this is a part of his regional outreach of Iran to include Russia, China, Turkmenistan, Iraq, amidst the rising tensions in West Asia. Now, what are these tensions? These tensions are vis-a-vis US, which has imposed sanctions on Iran. It has removed the benefits or the waiver that it had given to few countries that were importing from Iran. It has even threatened Iran of attacks. So these matters are what are highly escalated at present in West Asia. It has even sent B-52 bombers to the Gulf to attack Iran. So these are some tensions that are rising. On the part of Iran, it has asked for that. It has further threatened that it will withdraw from the nuclear deal. It has threatened that it will not allow trade from the Strait of Hormuz. So these are some issues that we have discussed in the past. The key phrase that has been used here is that this entire region is what is facing a gathering storm. So this is why I have included. This is a key phrase that you can use. Next, what is important is with regard to India's interest. India's interests are vis-a-vis oil imports from Iran. India has always had traditionally good relations with Iran. It has been importing 10% of India's oil is what is coming from Iran. All of this is what we have discussed. There is importance vis-a-vis the Shah Bahar port. Iran is a strategic partner for India in the context of India's interest in Afghanistan also. So that therefore Iran is important. But India also has good relations with the US. Also for India, Israel is what is important. Saudi Arabia is important. So this is this other arc in the equation between West Asia, in particular between Iran, and the other arc is of US, Israel and Saudi Arabia. So India is somehow stuck in the middle at present. So that is one issue that is emerging, and this is what we have discussed in much detail. Now the points that are new here are first and foremost vis-a-vis the Shah Bahar port. Now one thing that we all know is that at present a waiver has been given to India by US that India can engage with Iran vis-a-vis the Shah Bahar port. But what is important here is that this engagement is what is being also impacted because of these sanctions. A large number of banks who were investing in the port, several private companies that were investing in the port are now reluctant to actively participate in the port, and as a result of which the development of this port is what is getting impacted. So that is one thing that is important. Next, our editorial is offering some solutions, which is the most important aspect of this editorial. What India can do at this point of time is, first and foremost, India should engage with the European countries. Why India should engage with the European countries? Because if you remember, then in the P5+1 agreement, that is the nuclear agreement that was signed with Iran, UK was involved, France was involved, and Germany was involved. So even if we exclude Russia, China and US, then these three countries are European countries, and these three countries are very much in the favor of the sustainability of this agreement that was signed. So India should engage with these countries so that the tensions are what are de-escalated in this particular region. So that could be one solution that has been offered. The second solution that is important is that India should work towards developing a sanctions immune financial infrastructure, which is very much required. At present, India is forced to come to the pressure of US, primarily because the financial structure is such that India is dependent on the US, and so US can impose these sanctions and thus impact India's economy also. So India needs a financial structure to be developed which is immune of individual sanctions from countries, and this is what India should focus upon, is what is being advocated in this particular article. So these are two very good suggestions that have been given. For long I was looking for suggestions in editorials on this particular topic, and today we have found them. So you have to replicate these suggestions if we have a question in this particular context of West Asia. So please make a note of these suggestions. So that's about this particular article. It will be important for international relations, and that's going to be the relevance. So that's about today's discussion. Before we finish, please subscribe to our channel, share our channel with maximum number of people you can. That will be your biggest support to us. We have just begun and your support means a lot to us. So on that note, I thank you all, and I thank you all for watching the video.